Figures of speech. A figure of speech is language that is literal, straightforward, or factual. A figure of speech is the opposite of literal language, which states the facts and nothing but the facts. Example, instead of writing "it's raining hard out there," we might write "it's raining cats and dogs." We don't mean that puppies and kittens are literally falling from the sky. So why would we write it that way? Well, it's more interesting, and figures of speech can amplify what we're trying to communicate. People will pay more attention to what we're saying and be more likely to remember it. That's called rhetorical force. The way we use words to make our points clear, interesting, and memorable. But it's important to be able to recognize the difference between figurative and literal language. Otherwise, we might think cats and dogs are literally falling from the sky. Personification. Personification is a figure of speech that pretends that something that isn't human has human qualities. For example, the sky was weeping. Henry's belly growled. Or when the sun came up, the roses lifted their faces. Allusion. Allusion is when we refer to something without mentioning it directly. We use allusions when we want to remind someone of something but not mention it directly. Allusions don't work when the reader doesn't get what we're talking about. So in general, we make allusions to things that the reader knows about. Often, the stories that the reader knows are the stories that many people know. Biblical allusion. Biblical allusions are allusions that refer to stories that originally came from the Bible. Example, I'm going into the lion's den. Someone might say this on the way to a meeting. They don't really mean that the meeting will be full of lions. They're really saying that they're going into a tough situation by referring to a story from the Bible, the story of Daniel, who was put in a den of lions by an angry king. Literary allusion. Literary allusions are allusions that refer to a story in literature. Example, he's an old Scrooge. The writer isn't saying the person's name is Scrooge or even that he is old. The writer is probably saying this person doesn't like to spend money by making a literary allusion to Charles Dickens's famous story, A Christmas Carol. In A Christmas Carol, a character named Scrooge loves his money so much that he hates to spend it on anything or anyone. Mythological allusion. Mythological allusions are allusions that refer to stories from mythology, which is a collection of myths, often from a specific culture or religion. Example, while Kate is a talented player, her quick temper is her Achilles heel. The phrase Achilles heel is a mythological allusion to the character Achilles from Greek mythology. His only His only vulnerable spot was the back of his heel. He could not be harmed otherwise. However, even the small weakness proved to be a fatal flaw. He later died by being struck in his heel with an arrow. The sentence above is explaining that the girl's quick temper is her only flaw, but it has big consequences. Verbal irony. Irony is when we say the opposite of what we mean. Why would we do that? It makes the material more interesting and can actually emphasize what we really mean to say. Example, if someone asks if you'd like to go outside, but it's raining, you might say, of course I would. There's nothing I'd like more than getting soaked in the rain. When you use verbal irony, you aren't just saying no, you're explaining why you wouldn't like to go outside by contrasting that with the opposite idea. The difference between the two thoughts expresses what you really mean. Pun. A pun is a joke that uses the different meanings of a word or a play on words that sound alike. William Shakespeare was a master of writing puns, like this one from Romeo and Juliet. Here, two friends, Mercutio and Romeo, are talking about dancing. Nay, gentle Romeo, we must have you dance. Not I, believe me, you have dancing shoes with nimble soles. I have a soul of lead. How does this pun work? It puns because the words soul and soul sound the same but have different meanings and different spellings. Shakespeare is using a pun to emphasize the difference between Mercutio, who wants to dance and celebrate, while Romeo is heartbroken and wants to be left alone. The pun tells us a lot about the two. One focuses on his physical feelings while the other focuses on his emotional feelings. Check your knowledge. Does a pun make a reference to a biblical story? The answer is no. 2. If you wanted to say something that was literally true, would you use a figure of speech? The answer is no. 3. What do mythological allusions refer to? The answer, myths and mythological characters. 4. What type of figure of speech is in the following sentence? Our old house groaned and whined during the hurricane. The answer is personification. 5. If a allusion refers to something that happened in a novel, what kind of allusion is it? Answer, literacy. No, correction, literary. 6. What kind a figure of speech says opposite of what it means? Answer, verbal irony. 7. What kind of figure of speech makes a joke based on the fact that words have more than one meaning? Answer, pun. 8. If an allusion refers to a story from the Bible, what kind of allusion is it? Answer, biblical. Does the verbal irony depend on words that sound alike? Answer, no. 10. What kind of allusion does the following sentence make? I think the God of thunder lives in the apartment above us. Answer, mythological. May God have a blessing to the listening and the